Hey guys, it's me, Seren, back with another video. Today is day 9 of Hidden Figures, and today's hidden figure is Dorothy Bolden, a domestic worker that founded the National Domestic Workers Union of America to fight for domestic workers' rights. The NDWUA aided domestic workers in getting better wages, improved working conditions, and improved overall respect for their profession. It was the longest surviving organization of domestic workers in the U.S. before its shuttering in the mid-90s. Dorothy Bolden was born on October 13, 1924, to Georgia Mae Patterson, a housekeeper, and Raymond Bolden, a chauffeur, in Atlanta, Georgia. Beginning work at the age of 9, Bolden started off washing dirty cloth diapers for her mother's employer at $1.25 a week. She suffered from poor eyesight after a fall damaged her optic nerve when she was 3, and she attended E.P. Johnson Elementary School and then David T. Howard High School while working as a domestic. Later, Bolden would attempt to learn to be a seamstress in Chicago, but her poor eyesight made her studies difficult, and so she traveled back to Atlanta, working at Sears and the National Linen Service during World War II. Both Sears and the Linen Service were early adopters of efforts to unionize for workers' rights, which piqued Bolden's interest. By the 1940s, she worked as a maid full-time, and her experiences in white households led her to become involved in early civil rights activism. After she was arrested and jailed for refusing to stay late and wash dishes for a white female employer, Bolden decided to create an organization to protect maids and other domestic workers from abuse. In an interview from 1995, Bolden said about the incident, "They told me I was crazy because I had talked back to a white woman and called in some psychiatrists to prove it. A white woman's word was gospel, and 2 psychiatrists actually thought I was crazy. This was the way you got locked up. This was the system." It was a long road to her founding of the National Domestic Workers Union of America in 1968, and Bolden cut her teeth organizing boycotts and protests in Atlanta in the 1960s. In 1964, she put together a boycott of Atlanta public schools to protest the poor quality of education for Black American students. Bolden also worked with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who was her neighbor in her Vine City neighborhood, on initiatives to confront police brutality in Atlanta. Dorothy Bolden preferred to use public transportation and would often talk with other domestic workers during long bus rides around Atlanta. When she came to the conclusion that most of them had shared experiences regarding long hours, low wages, and poor working conditions, Bolden mobilized the workers to unionize and fight for workers' rights, gathering hundreds of women together in Atlanta to form the National Domestic Workers Union of America in the summer of 1968. The NDWUA enrolled tens of thousands of domestic workers across 10 cities in the United States, demanding higher wages and better working conditions. Within 2 years of its founding, maids in Atlanta earned an average of $13.50 to $15 a day, compared to the national average of domestic workers making $1.50 to $3 per day. The NDWUA also made sure domestics benefited from Social Security and workers' compensation, and Bolden herself taught maids how to negotiate with their employers or to find alternate employment if negotiations were unsuccessful. Much like today's National Domestic Workers Alliance, her group fought for workers' rights, created training programs, and taught workers to advocate for themselves in their jobs. One of her main objectives was to teach communication, and in the book Household Workers Unite, she's quoted as saying, "You have to teach each maid how to negotiate, and this is the most important thing, communication. I would tell them it was up to them to communicate." The NDWUA also created job placement programs and held workshops to teach domestic workers about their rights. Bolden made voter registration a requirement for the members, who she assisted with their applications for the ballot box. Bolden also emphasized that domestic workers deserve to be treated with respect, creating a code of conduct manual that was clear on the kinds of work a maid should not be asked to do, including not putting a worker's safety at risk, as well as not disrespecting the dignity of a domestic worker. "Household workers do not scrub floors on knees," she wrote. Under her leadership, the National Domestic Workers Union led to an increase in Atlanta wages by 33% over 2 years and registered thousands of Black women voters, exponentially increasing the Black presence in local politics and improving the overall quality of life for Black Americans in Atlanta. As founder and president of the strongest domestic workers union in America, Bolden became recognized as an extremely influential political leader in the 1970s. She was hired as a consultant on workers' rights for several presidential administrations, worked on welfare and social services reform, and also remained active in local Atlanta activism. As her time became split from the NDWUA, which she had operated out of her own funds, Bolden struggled to financially support the union through the 1980s and early 90s. The organization ceased operation in 1996, yet Dorothy Bolden remained active in politics and community organizing until her death on July 14, 2005, at 80 years old. And a quote in a supplement to the Atlanta Journal and the Atlanta Constitution in 1983 says, "A domestic worker is a counselor, a doctor, a nurse. She cares about the family she works for as she cares about her own, but domestic workers have never been recognized as part of the labor force." Dorothy Bolden, a hidden figure. Hopefully you guys had a great weekend and enjoyed this one. There will be more information and links in the description box as always. Food for thought as always. See you guys next time. Peace.